one of the things I had always grappled and struggled with was, I think, knowing and fearing my sexuality. And I couldn't quite reconcile, the messages I was hearing in church and the scriptures that I was reading myself with, oh, I think I'm not attracted to men the way that I'm trying to be or wish I was. And I think I know and had known for a long time that I maybe looked at women the way that, in terms of the way that I was supposed to look at men. And so I really, that was just an internal war going on with me. So when I was 28, I, so to speak, found a solution, which was I had never drank alcohol before. I had tried it, but just, was scared of it because just had seen some extended family members it basically consume and take their lives. And so I was like, I'm never going to drink. I'm never going to do drugs because it's not going to serve me. Well, when you feel like God doesn't want you and your family doesn't want you, it's just like, well, why not? Let me try to have some fun. And so I think that's when I started making my life a lot more difficult with drinking, more so probably to cope and trying to figure out, where do I fit in?
Hey guys, have you ever struggled with your own identity or your self-worth, or perhaps you've felt like an outsider and wondered where and how you fit in? That's the struggle that Lisa Robinson was going through, our guest today, and she tells a really amazing story. I think she has a lot of courage to share her story of what she went through in trying to cope with her own identity, wrestling with God and messages of the Old Testament, and understanding how can God love her, turning to alcohol as a way to deal and cope with the pain, but finally coming out of that and really summiting her mountain, her challenges, and refinding her faith and understanding of that God loves her. It's a powerful journey that she's on, and it reminds me of a Bible verse that I read this morning, Psalm 42, that says, just as the deer pants for a stream, for water, I pant for God. My soul pants for a relationship with God. I think it relates to many of us. A deer out in the desert in an arid environment is just struggling, has got to find water to survive. We as human beings, we struggle and we want to have that relationship. We struggle to have a relationship with other people, but also with God as well. And I think that's what was driving Lisa to try to find that relationship. Well, she does find it. She does summit her mountain, but she also learns to summit physical mountains by partaking in something called the She Summits. And it's a wonderful story of her tying in that sense of adventure and learning from the climbs that she gets climbing with other women. So this is a great story of adventure, of faith, of grit, and just a wonderful journey. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started with Lisa Robinson.
Hey, Rob, it's great to see you. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, we crossed paths a couple of years ago in our careers, and congratulations on you. You've continued to move onward and upward, which is really fun to see.
Well, I appreciate that so much. I certainly enjoyed my time working with you, and especially around partners in the channel, and really, had a great time at BT working with you. So I'm glad to have this conversation and be connected again.
Well, we're going to have a different kind of conversation today, Lisa. We're not talking about channels and business and enablement. I want to really talk about your personal journey, your personal story. And so I think I played a role in this, in kicking you off on an experience with our good friend Lou McAvoy, who's been on the show earlier, just an amazing mountaineer. And she's taken her passion and now is sharing it with folks with the She Summits that she is doing. I just saw a post from her on LinkedIn. She's got 3 of those this summer. And I introduced you to Lou and got you on one of those summits a couple years ago. Let's start there. What was going on at your life at that time? Because I just sensed like that would be just a really great thing for you to go do.
Honestly, Rob, Lou and I have talked so many times about you connecting us, and I can't think of anything that has added more to my life than those trips, honestly. I am so appreciative that you connected me with her. The crazy thing is, and this is, how I think spirit and God or universe, whatever one wants to call it, works. But I was looking into hiking groups or groups in Georgia to get connected with because I just had this yearning of kind of building a community, trying to find a community. And I don't exactly remember what was driving that other than trying to find like-minded people. I had been involved in CrossFit and with CrossFit gyms and things of that nature, but was just kind of looking to connect to the outdoors and meet new people just in my personal life. And you didn't know that though. We had a meeting and I remember it. You just asked me, "Hey Lisa, do you like to hike?" And I was like, that's so weird that you're asking me that. And then you shared with me that you used to be a part of a running group. And then you mentioned Louise and the trips that she puts together that you told me that she had summited Everest. And I was just like, wait, what? And that she was putting a group together and she had a slot open. Would I be willing? And I said yes. And I don't really know why, but I'm so glad I did.
Well, two things. That's the power of saying yes, right?
Uh-huh.
Which, there are books written on that, on just say yes, but also the power of community. And you and I were chatting about that earlier. And community is so important. And I've been thinking about it and learning about it at our church too. We're talking about it and how you have different rings of community. So you have, your most intimate circle of 3 or 4 friends, or maybe it's just one, right? And then you have a bit larger circle, and then you have a much broader circle. And each of those communities play a different role, but they're so important. And you were looking for that next ring, right? That middle ring of women, maybe a dozen, 15. And they talk about, in biblical terms, they talk about Jesus with the disciples. That was his community. And so you were looking for that community at that time, it sounds like.
I think so. Yeah, I'm just trying to think back and I do know that I was struggling with a little bit of just loneliness and connectedness of wanting to feel a little bit more tethered. And again, I was active and would working out and things like that, but there were I think it came up in some therapy conversations around yeah, expanding my circle and connecting to some like-minded people and, yeah, that's exactly it.
So what was that first trip like? You met the group. Now, well, first she has training, right? You did a training program to prepare for it?
You know what? She was very kind, after what happened is she sent a warm intro and she and I had a Zoom call and she was blown away that I was willing to come out there and not know anyone and didn't know her really. And she did have a recommended training program. I will say that the CrossFit training, the aerobic and anaerobic activity where you're maybe moving heavy weight and also got your cardio system activated really, really helped me. I was, you know, in really good shape then for that and ended up not really struggling too much. I was at the front of the pack, not racing, but was able to hang with the people up at the front. So she does outline a very detailed training program and, equipment that you need. And again, like I had never been, I don't even think I'd ever been to Colorado. So I had never done anything high altitude. I had no idea what I was getting into. But yeah, I was able to jump in. You asked me what it was like. That year was Louise's sister and who Louise and her, Louise grew up in Ottawa in Canada. And the group of ladies that were there were a bunch of hockey moms that they had grown up watching their sons play hockey together, and Louise's sister, Susan, who organizes a lot of Louise's stuff and they work together on a lot of things, but she was there, and so were a couple of her nieces, and they were so kind to me, like, they couldn't believe that I was the only person that didn't know anyone, and honestly, I didn't think much of it, but when I thought of how shy I used to be as a child, I was like, "That is pretty funny that I've gone out to Breckenridge, Colorado, knowing no one, and, yeah, just stepped right in. I remember they were sharing a charcuterie board and snacking and laughing and chatting, and they were so welcoming to me. It was almost like we were all meant to meet, and I think we were, and I've since seen and been on a couple of trips with some of those women, a few of them the next year and later on, to a trip that we did in Iceland. Yes, I fell in love with them, to be honest, and I knew that after that, and absolutely fell in love with Louise and her story and her drive, and I just knew and hoped that this could become an annual thing for me.
Has it?
It has, yes. In fact, you mentioned this year's trips. I signed up for 2,
Did
so
you?
yeah, I did.
Wow.
I love
That's
it that
awesome.
much.
Do you remember the feeling you had flying out to Denver in anticipation of that first trip?
I think I do. I don't remember being incredibly nervous. I remember I was supposed to meet up with 2 other ladies, the 2 of the ladies from Ottawa. One of them actually, um, is Suzanne's or excuse me, Louise's nephew. It was his wife. So her and another of the hockey mom, a lady named Stephanie. So I met up with them very quickly to, get on get into a van or something that had been rented for us to go to Breckenridge, and we picked up several other of the hockey moms that were already in town, and we just started chatting in the car, talking about dogs and land, and, Canadians are so friendly, I find anyways. I just don't really remember feeling nervous. I remember feeling very excited that I was about to do this and just meet some new people. And yeah, that's a really good question. I can't remember how I felt other than it almost just felt like something I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah. The reason I ask, Lisa, is because you were reminding me of when I moved to Colorado. So I did 2 years of college in Washington State at Wazoo, and then I needed to go. I just needed to go off and do something on my own. And so I flew out there by myself, had never been out there before. And I remember they had a car from this fraternity that a friend of a friend's dad went to. And so they picked me up. But it was kind of like that. I was excited, not 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 nervous, just kind of a little bit of, anxiety, not anxiety, nervous anticipation maybe, but just excitement about this new adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think now I'm actually recalling that the year previously I had just had a bit of a, yeah, I'd had a bit of a heartbreak.
Yeah.
And it broke something open in me where I was just, I think on a quest to connect, as we talked about, to something a little bit bigger. So this felt like an adventure that I really needed. And yeah, I needed a new experience. So yeah, it just felt like I was supposed to be there.
That's what I was sensing, Lisa. I didn't know what it was, but just you were just giving off a vibe that you needed something. You needed a connection, and that's just what I was feeling.
You're obviously an empath and or picked up, for sure. Because yeah, just time wise, I'm thinking through it as we're talking, and now I do recall that that was something where I was at one of those before and after moments, if you will, in my life.
Yeah. So the hike, what she puts together are these 14ers, so 14,000-foot summits in Colorado, and there are how many 14ers are there in Colorado? Do you remember?
I think there's over, I want to say 40. I could be wrong,
That
but I
many?
know,
Okay.
yeah, I
I
know
was
that
thinking
there's
like a dozen or something. But
yeah, I think there's a good bit.
wow. And so your first time hiking up to that elevation, and you
Yeah.
you you get out there what, on a Friday, and then the big hike is on Saturday or Sunday?
That year it was on a Thursday, so
Okay.
Thursday afternoon, and then you got, you know, yeah, that was the thing is like she was very educational about altitude sickness, and I didn't know how I was gonna react, but Friday, you arrive day 1, and then Friday is like a light acclimation hike,
Hmm.
and just like maybe 3 miles round trip, and,
Yeah.
see how everybody's feeling, just kinda just get your legs warm, and then Saturday morning, the 3rd day, we wake up at, like, 3 AM, and we're in the car by, like, 3:30 or 3:45, and because the goal is to start the hike before the sun comes up so that we can summit before noon because, storms roll in so
Mm,
quickly, and you don't wanna get
yeah.
stuck.
The summer thunderstorms.
That's right.
Yeah. And you don't really want to get caught on the open
No.
mountainside.
Louise being Louise, the last thing she wants is to, uh, be leading a group of women out and, something happen when,
Yeah.
anything can happen. Altitude sickness, just really anything. But yeah, it's just wanting to avoid any type of lightning or weather.
Yeah. So after that first hike, what happened after that? You guys obviously became friends pretty quickly.
We did. They were so just kind to me. I say I fell in love with Louise. I also fell in love with her sister. I mean, they are kind of like my sister and I, just opposites and just, but both just, Louise is so driven and ambitious and smart and athletic. It's like a robot. It's unbelievable. And then her sister is very athletic as well and just has the best laugh you've ever heard, and so I just loved them and they loved me, and so we kept in touch, and we just communicated, connected on Instagram, those things that, kinda make you feel a little connected to people, and then when the next year came around, I really looked back on that trip a lot because it snowed. I don't know if I mentioned this, but when we started out the morning, there was snow on the ground. It was Mount Cameron. That was my first 14er. And I had never seen anything like that. Like I had never, at that point, I had been out of the United States. I'd been to London, but I had never seen anything snowy. To me, it was like, man, this must be what the Swiss Alps look like or whatever, It was just a wonderland. And I think that that filled me up so much that I just could not wait to get back to it. And so I did some hiking here in the Appalachian Mountains. Not a lot, because I just feel like hiking here in Georgia is a lot different. But we kept in touch, and then the next year, of course, on LinkedIn, I would see stuff about She Summits and, connected with those ladies, and, when the next one came around, I was just stoked and, like, sign me up, like and it happens around this time in the spring, of when you're gonna get booked, so, yeah.
Now, these Canadian hockey moms, have you sent them condolences after the Olympics?
You know what? No, I have not. I have not. I should because they really are. In fact, I was in need to go to Ottawa so that I can see them because some of them they aren't like me. They don't they have other things going on and so they don't come back every year. So I haven't seen some of them. I've met so many across the years, but I need to go up there and give them a in-person heartfelt, sorry about the hockey situation.
Yeah. Give them a couple days, more
Yeah,
to go through
truly
the grieving
to
process.
nurse their wounds. Exactly. That's right.
But boy, those the men and the women, how amazing.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It's, pretty cool. I didn't realize that the women have won so many medals and, just such a cool thing, because especially people in the Northeast, like, I have a lot of friends from the Northeast that grew up playing hockey, and just seeing that representation, women's sports have just really, become, more and more popular, I feel like, over the past few years. For both teams, yes, it was great to see them win.
Yeah. Well, what I'd love to explore, Lisa, and I ask all my guests this, is just what was it like growing up? I don't know, I love childhood. I love hearing about other people's childhood, and sometimes they're not great childhoods, but I'm curious. You were telling me you grew up in North Georgia,
Yeah.
not far from where you live now. What was it like growing up there?
You know what? I had a great childhood. My parents are wonderful people. I'm fortunate enough they're both still alive, both still married, and I growing up in the '80s, I'm partial, but I am so thankful and equally sad for my nieces and nephews that they didn't get to experience the '80s and '90s.
Mhm.
We, I was very into sports as a child. I started playing baseball with I was the only girl on my team. I played with all boys and did that for a few years until, you get to a point and the batting helmets don't have a face mask. And my dad was like, no, you've gotta, we're not doing that. You gotta play with girls. And I was so upset.
Uh,
So I started playing softball and I played basketball. So always just very active. And, we had I remember our Christmases just very much, that the '80s, the tinsel on the tree, believing in Santa Claus and seeing what's there, and also, you know, I have a sister, so she's very, very, very girly, very into makeup and, you know, fashion, and I was into getting dirty and being outside,
you were the
so
tomboy.
that's right, 100%, and Yeah, so my parents, were very supportive with the sports, and, I was pretty good in school, and I think a lot of it was people pleasing. I, of course, wanted to walk a straight line because my mom was, a bit of a disciplinarian.
Did she keep a tight rein on you?
You know what? I think I just maybe somehow picked up young on being a little bit more accommodating and just not causing too much trouble, and so, because my mom, she would become vocal, and as we got into my teenage years, my sister was a bit more of the rebel, and where I
Mm,
was more of the teacher's pet and got a lot of, like, I think self-worth from, which is not good, from people's opinions of me. Like,
yeah.
my friends' parents typically were like, "Oh, we love Lisa," or my teachers did, or my coaches, and that made me feel really good. I got a lot of reinforcement positively of not causing too much of a problem, not wanting too much, and, doing what I was supposed to do, which serves me well in some areas. In some areas, I've had to work on that, but,
Lisa, I think I was the same way, and I'm wondering, did you find because of that when you were criticized or when people weren't happy with you that it hit maybe extra hard and maybe someone like your sister wouldn't feel it as hard as you did?
that is such a good question and something that really, I mean, I've really worked on over the past 10, 15 years through therapy and trying to learn, that I'm worthy because I'm here, I exist, or because God says I'm worthy and I am loved. And yes, I still struggle with that where if there's something that I am not doing correctly or I feel like I'm letting someone down in some way, which happens, we're human, but it does hurt or I take it extra hard as if I'm wrong or I'm unlovable. That's almost like the internal narrative that's going on in those moments.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that the same for you?
Yeah. I feel it the same way, and it's something that I try to improve. and 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 faith plays a role in that, like you said, that you are worthy and we're loved no matter what we do, no matter who we are. Yeah. Were you raised in the church? Were you a church-going family?
Really? My dad did try to take us to church when we were younger. We went to there's a little town outside of Auburn, Georgia called Carl. Like, as a Southern saying, you blink, you miss it when you're driving through there. But there was a church called Carl Baptist Church, and he would take us there, and we went to Sunday school. I think church was something that was very important to him. My mom, I think it wasn't a belief issue, but, maybe just it just wasn't something that she could get into for whatever reason, and so she wouldn't go, and eventually we fell out of it. However, most of my friends at the time, if I would stay the night with them, especially on a Saturday night, I had to take church clothes because on Sunday we were going to church, and then if it was in the summer, we were going to vacation Bible school because they all went, and I always wondered why we didn't go because most everybody, that's just what people did on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. And in high school, I actually would go to church alone sometimes. It was just something that I think a seed that was planted in me where, I was like, I want to be a part of this because I wanted to feel like I belonged there
Yeah.
for whatever reason. Yeah.
It's funny, when I was growing up, Lisa, my dad, we had to go to church. I mean, there was no choice. So we were forced to go. But I was embarrassed about it. And I didn't tell any of my friends that I went. And it wasn't until much later in life that I realized they were going too.
Wow. That's so interesting, and you grew up in Washington.
Yeah. Now, and it's very different in the Northwest,
I was
and,
gonna
and
say,
here in the
yeah.
South, it's much more open. When I moved here, it was the first time anyone came up to me and said, "Hey, Rob, what church do you go to?"
Mhm.
In Washington State and California and Colorado, nobody had ever asked me that.
I could see that. Yeah, that has been, in my adult life coming to realize, that it's not a part of everyone's story, not everyone does go, or if they do, I don't wanna say it's not an identity, but it just seems like it's, I don't know, maybe more private or less culturally defined. I don't know.
Mhm.
That's just
Yeah.
maybe an observation.
Yeah. So growing up, and then when did you really have started your maybe in life kind of with the difficult journeys? When things really start getting rough, and we tend to move away from school, and then we start having life lessons that can be painful.
Yeah, honestly, just, I promised you I was, comfortable of having this conversation. And one of the things I had always grappled and struggled with was, I think, knowing and fearing my sexuality.
Mm.
And I couldn't quite reconcile, the messages I was hearing in church and the scriptures that I was reading myself with, I think I, I'm not attracted to men the way that I'm trying to be or wish I was. And I think I know and had known for a long time that I maybe looked at women the way that, in terms of the way that I was supposed to look at men. And so I really, that was just an internal war going on with me. And in my mid 20s, for the first time, I had a relationship with another woman. And I was, again, two things can be true. For the first time, I felt, what love felt like, in that way of, okay, so this is what it was supposed to feel like, but then also, no, this what I've tried to pray away and been so scared of is actually true. What does this mean? And so I probably put that relationship in, the God spot, so to speak, until it ended. And when it ended, it was after about a 3-year period, I just was like devastated, but then also that's when it came to light with my family and people were starting to learn. So, like, while people were starting to learn that reputation that I described for you earlier of the teacher's pet, the friend's parent's favorite, friend, whatever was the messages were, I can't believe this. You're going to hell. Like for my parents, it was when we go to heaven, you won't be there.
Mm.
Just this. And it's so it's like all of a sudden, it's just like an implosion. So
Yeah.
when I was 28, so to speak, found a solution, which was I had never drank alcohol before. I had tried it, but just, was scared of it because just had seen some extended family members it basically consume and take their lives. And so I was like, I'm never going to drink. I'm never going to do drugs because it's not going to serve me. Well, when you feel like God doesn't want you and your family doesn't want you, it's just like, well, why not? Let me try to have some fun. And so I think that's when I started making my life a lot more difficult with drinking, more so probably to cope and
Hmm.
trying to figure out where do I fit in.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you did you realize younger growing up that you had these feelings and that you were starting to have this conflict, or wasn't it more into your 20s?
Yeah, no, I think I knew very early on. I would say probably as young as 5 years old, Rob.
Really?
I had a cousin that was a year younger than me, and he and I were and still are close. And as a kid, you pretend and you play like we had bicycles and we would pretend like they were dirt bikes. And, we would always play outside. And for whatever reason, we would play. He would pretend like, all right, well, I'm headed home to see my wife. And I'm like, yeah, I'm headed home to see my wife too. And it just didn't compute that this is wrong.
Yeah.
And as we talked about being a tomboy, there's actually a picture that my mom had taken of my sister and I outside. We're pretending like we're laying in the sun, we're at the beach. She's got on a swimsuit and I've just got on a pair of shorts and no shirt. Just laid back like this, like just you're young, so it's
Yeah.
not, anyway. But yes, I think I knew very early on.
Wow. And I just can imagine how difficult that would be, and then you're trying to ease the pain through alcohol. How bad did that get?
I'm very fortunate that it didn't get worse than it did. At first, you know, it was more of a weekend thing and it
Mhm.
pretty much stayed that way. I don't want to like make it sound like I kept it contained, But when I was early in my 20s, I was an educator, and that was a bit of a bubble as well. I wasn't out. It's like people didn't know about my sexuality, and it was also small town. I'm probably not giving people enough credit, but the assumption was that it wasn't going to be accepted there either. So people didn't know. My point is in leaving, I left education around this time too. So I leave education, I'm going through a career transition, I'm drinking, and then I'm in my first sales job, and people are drinking at work in the afternoons or going after work to the bar. And I learned early on that I preferred drinking alone.
Mm,
So I would drink a couple socially and then go home and drink like I wanted to. What I began to realize was once I felt, the a bit of a sensation of it made me feel relaxed, to be honest. And so once I felt like some of all of that self-fear and doubt quiet down, I would just keep drinking because I wanted to maintain that. So, into my 30s, I, learned to it's too hard to drink during the week like that because I gotta go to work the next day, and there were some days where I did go to work, with a hangover and fuzzy-headed. And the trouble is, there were people that would there's alcohol at work, it seemed like everyone was drinking that way, or at least that's what I thought, or they could handle theirs better than I could.
hmm
So I began trying to do some what they would call in recovery is like controlled drinking, where I would be like, "I'm only gonna have 2," and I couldn't quite stick to that. It was almost like once I started, I couldn't stop. So I worked out in CrossFit. I even, tracked my macros. So I knew calorically every day how much protein, carbs, and fats I was consuming. And I would literally budget enough because what I drank was beer, which is even, any of it's harmful or can be in excess. But I would for that beer. And when I would drink, it was probably anywhere from 10 to 12 beers.
Yeah, it
And
takes a lot of beers,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and it's like so I'm thinking, "Wait a minute, I'm counting my macros, I'm working out like a crazy person because CrossFit's crazy, and I'm 1 night a week or 2 nights, on the weekends, I'm undoing," you know, but I still looked fit. When I started to express to friends that I thought I had an issue, they were like, "No, you don't," because I think people, maybe myself included, you have this idea of what alcoholism looks like or what problem drinking looks like. And so there were times where it was bad enough that I shouldn't have driven. That was when I first started drinking, and then I transitioned to drinking more in isolation. And I have always been in some form of counseling or therapy and sharing this. Um and so there was that awareness that something wasn't healthy and it wasn't good.
Yeah. Is that pretty typical among alcoholics to drink alone, to
I think so.
do what you were
I think
doing?
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, there's a saying in recovery of like, addiction lives in basements and bedrooms, and you don't I can't speak for everyone, but, I didn't want people to see me doing it, which again is an indicator of like, if I don't want people to see me doing this, I'm probably doing something I shouldn't be,
Yeah.
or I know there's an issue because there were times, of course, that I had gone out to places with friends and, fell or had to be helped out. And even in those moments, like that's not having fun. It's sad, That's sad drinking and numbing.
Yeah. Was there a particular moment when you finally said, "This has gotta stop"?
Yes, I, back to faith, was trying really hard in my early 30s to reconcile that I could be gay and also loved by God and have a place at church, to the point I was willing and was open to it. God, if this is wrong, if I am Jesus and God can do anything, so change me. Like if I'm supposed to be single, I'll be single. If I'm supposed to be with a man, put him in front of me. Just very like, I'm I want to give myself to you. I'm still drinking, but I started getting back into church. And so I had some friends at the CrossFit gym I belonged to at the time who were very involved with church. And it activated that part of me, like from my teens, that I wanted what it appeared they had. Like, I wanted to be normal. I wanted to be able to be a person that goes to church and has that. I don't think so much of the status, but almost like the right to worship or the right to belong. But I still would sometimes hear those messages of I remember a pastor did a series on frequently asked questions, and one of the questions, so, like, each question was a message, and one of the Sundays, it was, "Is homosexuality a sin?" And when I listened to him share that, it just was like, I didn't like it, but then I thought, well, what in me is arguing with scripture? And so I would just kind of, it was almost, frankly, it almost felt like I was trying to torture myself of like trying to figure out how to make this work. And so I went to several different churches. That being said, along that journey, I knew that alcohol just didn't fit into the integrity model I was trying to have for myself.
And do you feel like it was an overnight switch, or this was like months of kind of wrestling with this?
It was months, maybe years.
Yeah.
And I started to talk about it. And once I started to talk about it, that makes it real. So I tried to stop drinking. So I would go for months, not pick up a drink,
Just try it
you
on your
know?
own.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I did. I would for months at a time. And then I decided one day I was outside doing some yard work. It was a hot day and I was like, I texted a friend, "Hey, you know, I haven't drank in like 4 months." I was keeping track. But you think I could drink a beer and be okay? And he was like, "Yeah, just get a six pack. Don't drink all of them." And Rob, I did that, went and got a six pack, started with one, ended up drinking the rest, went to the store, got another six pack.
Got another six pack.
So, and then I was like, okay, not drinking anymore. I remember it was the fall, it was around Thanksgiving. I didn't drink until right up to December. Holidays are typically touchy for good and bad reasons. And I did it again. I did it again the day after. I think I did it a couple of times of like, meaning I got the alcohol and did drink too much. December 26th was the last time I did it, and that was in 2018. And the next day, I had been chatting with a friend who was in a recovery program, and I asked her, "What's your experience been like?" And anyway, December 27th, she went with a meeting, went with me to a meeting, and I just went like headfirst into doing everything they said for me to do
Hmm.
in the program.
Yeah. And how long were you in the program? Is there a certain time frame that's
Yeah.
committed to this?
Yeah, so I was in the program rigorously for probably over 3.5 years. And I don't name it because there are different programs out there and I don't want to speak on behalf of the program because the program in general, the one I was in is absolutely amazing. And I had a sponsor. I went to 90 meetings in 90 days. I worked the steps, did all of the things I was again told to do, did a fearless moral inventory of myself. I got to the point where I made amends. And so it just became a part of my life where I still supplemented with church, and the pandemic happened and we had Zoom meetings and then we would have outdoor meetings. But I probably talked to my sponsor every single day during the pandemic, most every day in some fashion. And it wasn't always that something was wrong. It was just the company. She was a very maternal, wise lady. She was 72 years old, and I chose her because she had 26 years of sobriety. And so it's like they told me, if you want what we have, you'll be willing to do what we do. And what better person to teach me than someone with that kind of wisdom?
Mhm.
Mm. I think, yeah, I was in it for about 3.5 years, and the kind of breaking moment happened within that period where I had met someone and it just ended extraordinarily just brutal, and that was, I think, around the time where you must have sensed something and introduced me to Louise. But I do wanna say that, I had been in therapy and still am in therapy actually with the same person, and it started to feel like I was almost doing the program alcoholically, like overdoing it, which they say isn't possible, but I was still finding that I didn't have a much of a life outside of the program,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so just felt very dogmatic and rigid for
Would you
me
say that had
personally.
become your community that we were talking about?
Absolutely my community. I mean, the amount of people that I communicated with regularly, um, I had more than 12 disciples, if you will. I mean, and I miss that, I had I went to women's meetings only, and, of course, doing the things that I do, as I've mentioned, people pleasing, I would sign up to chair meetings, cover birthdays where people get their chips, and, just really just embraced every part of it, and, I was going to 4 or 5 meetings a week, and, I was not dating anyone, single, I was working at Beyond Trust at the time, and just kinda like life started to feel like there was something missing, and then now on the other side of it, I'm still connected to some of those women in some ways, but a lot of them don't talk to me because, well, who knows? People are busy. I don't know their
Yeah.
but I've been back to a meeting a couple of times, and I think, you know, I was always taught, like, if you stop going to meetings, you're gonna drink again, and for me, that hasn't been my story yet, and I hope it never is, but I do know what to do, if I need to go back, but that was my community 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You were
much
totally
support.
ready for that new community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
But
exactly.
I'm thinking about what you were talking about though, and the conflict you were feeling, Lisa, between kind of what the Old Testament says about homosexuality, and yet Jesus comes and the message is love everyone. It's just what commandments do we have to know? Well, love God and love each other.
That's right.
And if we can break it down to just that, it's actually pretty simple.
It's super simple, and, there's been things that I've come across since where, because I used to look up Leviticus, and I would look in the back of my Bible in the index and look up homosexuality and just, okay, if I know this, if I can know a thing, then I won't be it or do it, People would say it's a sin, and then sometimes people would say, "Yeah, well, no sin's greater than the other," and I'm like, "But wait a minute. How is something that I am a sin when I can't help it and I'm trying so hard to, like, take it away and it's not going anywhere," to then get to the point of, like you said, perhaps it's other people's interpretations are just theirs, and, you know, I don't need to take it as a message about, back to what we shared earlier, that I am wrong or not lovable because this pastor said that it is a sin and it's his job to preach the Bible and it is wrong. And I don't need to take that on. I just need to know that, hey, that's just not for me. I don't That's not in line with what I believe to be true. But there again, I think sometimes it was confusing about what's written, and that Jesus came against the or to change, not against, but to change the Old Testament way. And yeah, so I think it is very simple.
Yeah. We're watching The Chosen again, and
Yeah.
fantastic show. And in the first series, the first season, when Jesus decides to go have his first conversation, it's with the woman at the well who is,
Right.
she's had 5 different husbands. She's living with a man who's not her husband. And that's who he chooses to go have his first conversation with, to say, you're loved.
Yep. Yep. It's like I've heard someone say it's Jesus is for the people religion was forgetting and who power was oppressing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, Lisa. It's obviously been a tough story, but where are you now? And between living through that, now you're starting to do these hikes with Lou. What kind of strength have you developed from this? What kind of resilience?
It's been an amazing thing. Lou has opened up a whole new world for me where, it's not just what happens in September when we hike. It has just what it's done for me as a person, knowing that I am someone who can say, "Yeah, I do 14ers," where, mostly people in Colorado know what that means, but you usually have to, like you said earlier, explain that it's over 14,000 feet. It's a sense of self-pride. It has also connected me with a group of people which I encountered in recovery. Again, I was kind of moving away from recovery, looking for my new group. I was very embraced as I am in recovery and very much taught God is love. God is truth and God is love, like you said. And so I didn't, I had a 72-year-old woman that was my sponsor and just a very Southern belle who I would have assumed, and she does love Jesus and she is a church going person. One would assume she would be shocked or reject me and never did. These ladies, when I went to Denver, similar thing. These are people that are in Canada where LGBTQ plus rights are important to them. And in fact, Louisa's sister is very active in the community and isn't even, she's an ally. She's married to a man. She has sons who are married to women. And yet she works in the Canadian government and does a lot of work for people. And so just kind of being exposed to a group of people with that kind of perspective, and also me kinda, like, right sizing that that's just one part of me, kinda like I'm right-handed. It's like,
Yeah.
who cares? Like, that's great, cool, okay. Well, what do you like to do for fun, you know? And, it's just led to other adventures. A couple of years ago, Louise and her sister put together a 5-day trek in Iceland. And so, you asked me earlier about my childhood. It was wonderful. I also come from a very blue collar, paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes the checkbook is negative. My mom crying at the table trying to make ends meet. My dad working 2 and 3 jobs. My mom working 2 jobs. Never in a million years had it occurred to me that I would ever set foot in Iceland. And yet, because of, a career and you connected me with Louise, now here I am where I get to go with people who know what's going on and I'm not going to these places alone. So we did a trek across Iceland for 5 days, and then Louise was like, "Hey, since we're so close to Norway, I just thought maybe I wanna go hike the highest peak there. Are you in?" And I was like, "Yes." So
We're so close to Norway.
yeah, Louise is a machine. So we we do this Iceland trip, Rob, and at the end, Louise and I get back to Reykjavik. We fly to Oslo, Norway. We rent a car, and we drive up to the highest peak, which is called Galdhøpiggen in Norway. We climbed that, and then the next day we pretty much drove the perimeter of an area around Norway and got to see a lot, and so it's just been one adventure after the other.
Love the spontaneity of that.
Yes. Well, it's like you've got this person that's climbed 6 of the 7 major summits in the world who
Yeah.
you're gonna be safe with. They've got all these stories of Everest and Mont Blanc and Kilimanjaro and just Denali, just wild, and so I'm like, "I wanna learn everything I can from you. Yes,
Yeah.
please."
Yeah, just to absorb. I mean, I've interviewed her several times and she tells a few stories, but when you're spending that kind of time and when you're outdoors walking, you've got so much time to hear those stories.
Yeah, and to watch her with other people, like, we're doing these hikes, and yet she's at the back of the group because you typically have people sorta divide up around ability level. You've got a
Mhm.
handful that are, you know, the altitude's not bothering them. You've got a handful that this is just something that they wanted to be a part of and do for the first time ever. And Louise is just very selfless in, making sure other people are okay. I've seen her carry 2 and 3 additional packs in addition to hers because to get weight off people, having to turn around and go back with people that get to a point where they can't go on, and she's just yeah, she's an extraordinary person.
Have you guys is like sitting around the campfire part of this in any of these ventures?
It is. The Iceland trek was a little bit, I wouldn't call it bougie, but, like, we had shelters at night,
Yeah.
so we all slept almost like, summer camp where there's bunk beds and there's, like, 15 of us all in one room. But, yeah, there's stories there's dinners, there's these cabins that they rent, She Summits does, and Breckenridge are really nice homes. So there's yeah, there's time at night where like there's a hot tub and we all share stories or just talk about life. And some of these women are just wives and not I didn't mean it like that. Not just wives and mothers. They are wives and mothers and the opportunity to get to do something like this for themselves, just to see them just be a part of it, to be with other women on a weekend where they're all in the cybersecurity industry in some capacity, and to do something like this that they've maybe always wanted to do or never knew about, but because they know Lou or Aaron Feiger, they're like, "Hey, I trust you." And then they do it, and the sense of accomplishment is really cool and fun to see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Lisa. Well, we've come to the rapid fire round, which I'm learning is not very rapid
I love
because
it.
the answers always intrigue me. And so we end up in different conversations, but we'll see how we do. Okay.
Okay, all right, let's
All
do
right.
this.
Um, what is one failure that has taught you the most?
Man, one failure that's taught me the most. See, now I'm slowing this rapid fire down.
See, there we go. This is what happens,
Yeah,
Lisa.
this is what happens. Yeah, I think I almost view it more, as a fork in the road, but when I was 18, I was supposed to go away to college, which wasn't very far. I was gonna go to North Georgia College in Dahlonega, but
Yeah.
I would have to live on campus, and my sister was getting married she had just got married at the same time, and so, like, I'm grappling with her moving out, and we were close, so I think I was really sad about that, and then being away from home, just couldn't handle it, and so I decided not to go to North Georgia College and ended up commuting to college, and I wouldn't call that necessarily a failure, but I regret that deeply because I feel like there was so much experience I took away from myself in terms of my life journey that we've even talked about today, where had I have taken that other path, I think things would have looked a lot different.
Hmm. But you never know.
Never know, and I've been told that things work out exactly how they're supposed to.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. What is one lesson that hiking the 14ers has taught you?
I would say taking things one step at a time. The best part of the climbs, it's just that, like, you think that summit moment is gonna be it is fun. It's fun to get up there and have that bird's eye view in airspace almost, but it's the climb. And when I think about that metaphorically, it's taking things one step at a time and enjoy the journey. Enjoy the struggle, the resilience it takes, because you can sometimes there's a false summit, which means you think it's the summit, but you get up there and you realize, "Oh, no, there's more to go." But enjoying that part of it. The climb down is always far more difficult for some reason, but in life, there's peaks and there's valleys, and when there's a valley, there's really good things that can come from that as difficult as it is, and just remembering that, hey, what goes up must come down, and I'm gonna be okay. So I just need to, you know, probably depend on other people, just take it one step at a time, enjoy the ride, appreciate that summit moment when it happens, and know there will be another one. But yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It's funny, I do a lot of cycling and I go out on a ride by myself or with the friends, and it's part of me is like you can't help but think in your mind, you're thinking, okay, this is when I can get done. You're kind of anticipating and wanting it to finish. And then I stop myself and I say, wait a second, why I got to enjoy this exact second, every moment that I'm
That's
that I'm
right.
doing this.
Yeah, it's true, and it's hard. I mean, cycling is exhausting, and that's kinda how, in some ways, we're wired is to get to the finish line. Things are so instant now with internet and social media and the intake of information that sometimes, like, learning how to be still and know and being the moment and just appreciate right where you are has been something that, I've tried to be more intentional about.
Yeah. All right. What's your mental reset when fear does creep back in?
I Well, my mental reset is typically a walk. It is my formula is the basics: walk, water, nutritious food, and good sleep. And if I can kinda keep moving, just simplify and keep those things, and maybe recall times where I've been scared before and did it anyway, or, just gone through something, I think I just kinda face it instead of avoid it. Trying to think of examples where I feel like I don't get too much in fear anymore, but I think if I'm being honest, there's always fear of something.
Hmm.
So I think making sure that I'm, you know, hydrating, sleeping, moving my body, and eating good food. Um, just trying to be reasonable about whatever the problem at hand is and talking about it. I think talking about it helps a lot. That was a recovery thing of just like not hanging on to too much, and that'll sometimes divide the power.
Yeah. But what you're saying is you recognize a very strong connection between the physical state and the mental state.
That's
And you're
right.
you're making sure that you're taking care of yourself physically to be better mentally.
Yeah, I find that I used to work out so that I would look strong or, look fit, but now it's definitely more for the mental and emotional.
Yeah. Yeah. And you miss it, don't you? I mean, it's
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
you
absolutely.
go one day without it and something's off.
Yeah.
Something's off
Yeah,
kilter.
it's like the endorphins are my friend.
Yeah, exactly. Going back and thinking about your childhood and on the question of resilience, do you think you were born with that, bred with that early on, or something that really took later in life to truly develop?
I think it took later in life, and I say that because I do think I was bred with a bit of my mom is really hard on herself. And I can remember even in high school sports, softball or basketball, if I made a mistake, I would get so in my head I couldn't get out of it. And so I didn't have that resilience or that mental toughness to be like, now I can be stubborn where I'll keep trying or just like, I'm determined to make something happen, but I would say that, resilience is something that it's taken me later in life to learn, to keep going through challenges where I think in the past, maybe in childhood, it would make me go into freeze mode where
Yeah,
I just couldn't see around it or past it.
yeah, yeah. We've talked a lot about faith in your journey. I'm curious, are you the type of person that has like a Bible verse that you go back to that you think about, or more, or maybe Bible stories?
I think Proverbs was always, a go-to. I like the one that a lot of people seem to like of Jeremiah 29:11. I like be strong and be courageous. Um, so there are certain ones that I um, draw on, but there's probably not a specific one. I like Philippians. That's the one of gosh, I'm going blank. Love is patient, love is kind.
Yeah, yeah,
Mainly the ones around love and things that Jesus actually said, not,
yes,
you
yeah.
know
What I'm finding, Lisa, is fascinating is I've been reading the entire Bible, and you start realizing how much was pulled out of the Old Testament from what Jesus was preaching and things that he was saying. He was a rabbi. He had studied and a lot. So there's a lot of correlation, and it's fun to see that correlation back and
Yeah,
forth.
I'm sure, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Well, Lisa, this has been quite a conversation. I really thank you for opening up, and I've really enjoyed it. Do you have any just final recommendations for others that are, maybe going through what you went through or just any struggle in life? You've had some big challenges.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Rob, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and having this conversation. I am very, passionate about if you're struggling with addiction or alcoholism to talk to somebody. There are meetings everywhere. That was just I think it's a powerful program or there's all kinds of programs out there that are, I've learned that people's sobriety journeys look different. Let's just say talk to somebody and know that you're not alone. I think there's a lot more research and information being put out about, how easy it is to struggle with alcohol,
Yeah.
particularly. I mean, how accessible it is. It's legal, it's everywhere. I would just say, you're worth getting help and asking for help, and I learned in the program that people that don't have a drinking problem aren't typically sitting around thinking that they do have one, so it's kinda like if you're in that point, maybe just talk to somebody that you could trust and even, reach out for help. There's stuff everywhere, especially nowadays. And for the other pieces of sexuality and homosexuality, and particularly growing up in the South, and it's not just Southerners, there are plenty of loving and kind Southerners, but, make sure you do try to expand your circle to people that are reminding you and pointing you toward truth. That can be hard to do. Like, even for me, I stuck close to for a long time, like, I really wanted people to love me, like, I don't want you to think that I'm bad or I'm sinful,
Hmm.
but in some cases, especially when it's not your family, those aren't your people, and so it's tough, but finding people that love you and encourage you and treat you the way you would treat a friend, I think that's really important, and you just kinda figuring out what that looks like for you, and that God does in fact love all people, including and especially people who are gay.
Hmm. Yeah. You're lovely. So
Thank you. So are you, Rob.
thank you. Well, and thank you so much for coming on. Really, really enjoyed it. If anyone's listening to this and is like, man, I would really love to talk to Lisa. Are you open to that?
Absolutely. Yeah, send them my way.
Okay, great. And they can find you on LinkedIn, of course, where all
Yes,
professionals
absolutely.
live.
That's right. Where all professionals live. That's right.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks so much.